It's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight, Miriam Gross joins us for reviews of Romeo and Juliet, The Merchant of Venice, and McNeal. Plus, I go to my corner and Leslie goes to her lounge. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Two on the Aisle. And hello, Leslie.
Hey, hi.
How you doing, Miriam?
I am very well tonight. Thank you, Dad.
Okay. Well, we have some interesting shows to review.
Oh, indeed.
Two very old shows with directors who have taken a very new approach.
Exactly. It's odd. These are not meant to be talked about together, really. But Miriam's going to lead on The Merchant of Venice, which we just saw last night.
Yeah.
Time flies.
At the classic stage.
At the Classic Stage Company. But I'm going to lead on Romeo and Juliet. So which would you like to do first? Want to start?
Let's start with Romeo and Juliet.
Hey, okay. So you're going to have a lot to say about this one too, Miriam, I think, because I did not know who this guy Kit Connor was, and I bet you knew who Kit Connor was.
I knew who he was after someone else described him to me.
Oh, I see.
I had heard of him. I didn't know his name.
Okay.
He plays Romeo.
Yes, and he's playing Romeo, and Juliet is being played by Rachel Zegler, who was the Maria in the newest movie of West Side Story, the Steven Spielberg movie.
And I think she is the first performer who's ever done that, at least on a professional basis.
Playing Juliet and Maria.
And Maria. Yeah, that's a very interesting...
And I think that's kind of appropriate because the set of Romeo and Juliet looks like it could be the set of West Side Story, or maybe The Outsiders, or given the amount of teddy bears on the stage, and I have no idea why they're there, it could be set in F.A.O. Schwartz.
I'll tell you why the teddy bears are there, because it's to show how young they are. It's to show that they still hold on to things like their teddy bears. And also that they have that pit that they go into, which is like one of those pits that you get toys out of and whatnot. They're still kids. That's the point that I think, that's my impression of what that was trying to say.
To me, I find it to mostly be an expression of the aesthetic that they're going for, like the choices that they're making in costuming and set design. But I think that's also a very interesting interpretation. I didn't think of that at all, but I think it's
That's
true.
because you're still a kid.
Leslie, I'm 27.
You're still, honey.
Well, one of the things that I actually think Kit Connor did so well was you really got the feeling of how much Romeo feels and impulsively feels his feelings. Like, he feels so strongly. And I think the show really got started with the balcony scene with him and Juliet. That's where it really started to take off for me. Before that, I was kind of like, I wasn't like super impressed with the vibes they were going for off from the beginning. But once they got going, once they got into the actual Romeo and Juliet thing, I think he really pulled it off. Rachel Zegler really pulled it off. I think they did some really interesting things with set design, with the way they spoke the words of Shakespeare. Because a lot of the time people will say Shakespeare as if they were giving a speech the whole time.
Well, they pontificate.
Yeah, and for this, it felt like a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time, it felt like they were like teenagers talking, you know? The way Juliet spoke to the nurse, I was like, yes, that is how a child would speak to an adult who is withholding information that she wants Christmas morning, you know what I mean?
And in reality, Juliet's supposed to be 14. I mean,
she's 13,
her mother,
technically.
Yeah, her mother is in her early 30s. You know,
yes.
Her mother is not old. That's part of that whole concept. But it is interesting. I instantaneously got what was going on. Obviously, the costuming, the West Side Story vibe, all of that. But I don't know. I mean, I didn't mind it. I have no objection. They used most of the text. They tried their best to speak it. Some people speaking it better, some people not. But at least it was Romeo and Juliet. It didn't run for 4 hours, which was okay with me. I enjoyed it. I didn't think I would.
I enjoyed it for the most part. I have to say that Kit Connor got a whole round of applause during the balcony scene where he jumps up and grabs the balcony.
And he holds himself up, which is impressive.
And does a pull-up, so...
And he stays in the pull-up, so
And
good
there
on
were
him. He
at
must work
least
real hard for that strength.
75 girls waiting outside to say something to him.
Yeah.
By the way, this is what I wanted to say. We not only have this, but we have And Juliet, which is a jukebox musical.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Okay, so I prefer that to any Romeo and Juliet I've seen recently.
Oh, okay.
Because
Interesting.
it's
I
well
love
written.
Anne Juliet.
It's very well written.
I actually think Juliet is better with Romeo than she is alone.
On her
I
own.
also saw Anne Juliet. I wasn't overly impressed.
Neither was
I have to say, I think this production can get a little bawdy at times. You have Tommy Dorfman, who plays both Tybalt and the nurse. And then, you know, the nurse is generally an older woman. And at one point, she's with her fan, and she's fanning herself between the legs. I could have done without that part.
I don't specifically mind that because I think it helps you understand what's actually happening in the scene and what the nurse is like really saying. It's a little on the nose, and I definitely understand like
That's the problem. It was nowhere near her nose.
There's a scene that's left out. This is one of the many scenes they left out. There's a scene where the nurse crosses the square and runs into her man, Peter, I think his name is.
Yeah.
And their
Right.
conversation together in the original script is the bawdiest stuff you've ever heard. She is an older woman. She's a bawd. That's a word for the person who, you know, an older woman, a tavern wench kind of person.
I've only heard that in reference to someone who actually ran a whorehouse. The
A
term bod.
Okay, a bawd can be a male or a female, and it's somebody who talks dirty.
Interesting.
bod.
I've never heard that
Yeah.
definition of
I
it.
mean, that's it sort of is played the way you are.
Another thing that,
Yep.
that Miriam had a problem with, a lot of the actors played multiple roles.
Yes, well, that's, yeah. And multiple sexes.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
the costuming was very confusing for
Yeah.
that.
yeah.
Sorry.
The same actor plays both of Juliet's parents, and I think that's
That was funny.
well, no, because at one point I couldn't tell which was which,
Well,
and
that's what I meant, it was
I
funny.
think that there are certain scenes where the play works better if both parents, in other words, two people,
Right.
are dealing with
At
Juliet.
first, I saw it on the playbill and the little note that they give you, this little thing, and it was a little bit dark in the theater. I didn't realize that it was the same person playing Capulet and Lady Capulet. So I was like, oh, they're doing like a gay couple for her mother. But no, it's the same man play. And I thought that could be kind of nice. I would like to see that. Interesting thing. But there were a lot of times where two actors were playing two completely different roles, and the transitions weren't clear, and the costuming didn't make them clear. And it was especially difficult there were certain actors who had very distinctive haircuts, primarily Mercutio, who also played the prince and the friar, and the nurse, who also played Tybalt. So they're very distinctive characters, and without any change to their hair or much change to their costuming, especially the first third of the show, I was so confused. And then I was like, oh, wait, okay,
Right.
Tybalt always wears this jacket, so when the nurse is wearing that jacket, they're actually Tybalt.
Right.
And then they came out in that jacket as the nurse after Tybalt died, but I was like, come on.
Maybe she inherited Tybalt's jackets and she was Juliet,
Right, that's what they left
the
it.
same
Maybe.
family. But I think Sam Gold does realize that, because at one point he has one actor who says, okay, I'm this character now.
Yes,
I will
and
say
that was
something.
helpful.
Sam Gold annoys me a lot of times when he strips plays down. He didn't strip this one down that much. He overstuffed it, if anything, with but because the young people enjoyed it and they were all participating on the same level. I mean, it's not as if Kit Connor or even Zegler were better than anybody. They weren't. There were several people there who were at least as good. So, I mean, it was enjoyable. I think it was meant for a younger audience. It didn't bother me that much. And it's one of the ones of Sam Gold's that I like more. I mean, I've liked others of his, but I liked
All right,
it.
we're running a little over,
Okay,
so
we
how
are.
many playbills?
Oh,
I
I
would
would,
give it
Okay.
Go ahead.
3.5 playbills.
I think I would give it 3.
I will go for 3.5.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
there you are.
The Merchant
So-
of Venice.
This one's on you, kiddo.
Yeah, so this was a very difficult play for me. I was supposed to go see Wicked the night I saw this, and I said, you know what, even though I had already paid for my ticket, I was like, nope, I'm going to eat the cost, because I really wanted to see The Merchant of Venice, because it is a famously anti-Semitic play, and as a Jew, I wanted to see how it was done in the modern day. The director, Igor Golyak, is a Jewish, and he has done a lot of Jewish-related content, such as Our Class. And it was such a painful play to watch. The way they framed it was, they were like, we're going to perform it the way it was meant to be, as a comedy. Because technically, The Merchant of Venice is one of Shakespeare's comedy. And the way they built on it, and they built on the anti-Semitism and on the insult after insult after insult that Shylock goes through. And Richard Topol did an amazing job as Shylock. He was incredible. And you know, at first it was like, yeah, I see they're being anti-Semitic, and like I know what the play's doing because I know it's a Jew who's directing it, so I know they're in on the thing. I know, even though not all the characters in the play know it, I know on a meta level that they're in on it. They have Shylock dress up as a vampire with blood, which is a reference to blood libels, that Jews were accused of drinking Christians' blood, or especially Christian babies' blood, to make matzah. So they were, and they made it funny. It was very funny, and I laughed. But it kept piling on, and it was, even knowing half the audience is Jewish, the actor playing Shylock is Jewish, the director/writer is Jewish, I know mentally where they're coming from. It was so painful and so difficult to watch. I was crying through half of it. And like when Shylock came out, like they would have a sign for you to boo, and I would cheer, and it was such a slap in the face to see that anti-Semitism, even knowing the perspective where they were coming from. And it was such a powerful watch. It is a show I will recommend to everybody. I actually texted all my friends to be like, you guys, you really need to see this show. And I see a lot of shows because of this one, and I don't usually go around recommending them to friends, but this is a show where I think everyone needs to see it. Like, I wish there were like a recording of this that they would put online somewhere, because I think it is that powerful and that necessary for people to see.
May I just speak a little bit about the way? Okay, it's really two plays in one. The company has, I believe it's not just the director, but I feel like the company put this together.
No, absolutely.
And they have a guest artist, and the guest artist is T.R. Knight. And my companion said, he looks so much like that guy on something Grey.
Grey's Anatomy.
Grey's Anatomy, thank you. And I was thinking, I knew he looked like somebody. I said, but that guy's name is Knight. And then we looked at the playbill, and that's T.R. Knight. So, but I didn't know he was in it. And what they did was they framed it as the Antonio show. It was a late-night show. They had all kinds of things going on. They were bathing suits. And, I mean, the costuming and whatnot was was analogous to what they did with Romeo and Juliet,
yes.
I think.
There were definitely similar vibes.
But Romeo and Juliet didn't write a separate play. They stayed within the format of the play. This had the play about Antonio and all the things that were going on. And
Antonio of the Antonio show, not Antonio just of the Shakespeare character.
Yes, Antonio, and he only becomes Antonio of the Shakespeare character in the end when the trial is on, when it's actually his.
He plays Antonio throughout the whole thing, but
he's only the Shakespearean Antonio during the trial scene. He's really not. He's more of an announcer and he tells us all the things that are missing in the scenes we haven't seen.
During the most of the play, he's like speaking Antonio's lines, but like at the end, he is playing Antonio.
But he also says Act 4, Scene 1.
Yeah, he's also narrating a little bit.
It sort of lets you know where we are, but a lot of lines are cut. A lot of so anyway, it was a 3-hour, almost a 3-hour show.
Actually, I think it was more like 2 hours, but no intermission.
Yeah, there was definitely one point where they were like, "Oof, that was really heavy. Let's bring the energy in the room back to fun."
Right.
And they did like a puppet show, and the puppets were filleting each other. And I think I would have rathered an intermission at that time, because like I get what they were trying to do with the very body humor. They were trying to be like the juxtaposition of this wildly inappropriate thing with this very serious scene that we just saw. I understand the point of that. I think for me it was too much, and I could have used the intermission. So I would have rather they put an intermission.
It was a bit much for me too. I've seen productions of The Merchant of Venice, more straightforward productions, but here they've got, they really do emphasize the anti-Semitism here. Shylock comes off looking like a Hanna-Barbera villain. I mean,
right.
It could be Dick Dastardly.
That's the problem to me. That was really the problem to me.
Or Snidely Whiplash.
But I think that's the point. I'll let you finish.
No, but anybody who's seen the Al Pacino, for example, I mean, I walked away going, ah.
Which I think Richard Topol was in that too.
Yes, probably. He's been in so much. He's a veteran actor. But, I mean, I don't know for sure, but he may very well.
I believe I
don't
read
have
on his
credit.
IMDb page.
Okay. But anyway, so, well, that was made into a movie too, so right, very well. But anyway, the point being that I prefer the standard version. I prefer to have it not be funny. I prefer to actually be drawn into the pain, because that's the whole point of the play. I mean, everyone thinks that it's a sympathetic play. Marlowe wrote The Jew of Malta. If you don't know that one, you should read it, because in that he boils nuns in oil. He has a big vat, and he makes sure that the nuns fall into it so they can boil, and he goes, you know. But this play doesn't do that. It really approaches this, the theme of anti-Semitism with a kind of a, everybody thinks this. I mean, we all know that, you know, the Jews do this and Jews do that and whatnot, which was the attitude of the time. It was the attitude, but he didn't write a play about a guy who boils nuns in oil. He writes a play about a father whose daughter has betrayed him, who has the only job really open to Jews at that time. I mean, it's very much a picture of what Jewish life was like, and the anti-Semitism.
And yet, I don't know if I would call him a sympathetic character.
That's the other story. That's the other side. You know, it depends on how an actor plays him,
He's
too.
looking, but you know, he wants to hurt the guy, and I understand he's in a lot of pain, but
I don't know. I would want to hurt a guy who constantly snubbed me and spit at me, and I might not want to kill him,
right. But if you take, the whole idea is if you take flesh from that particular part of the body, the chances are you will kill him. So that's, you know.
I don't know if I'd go as far as Shylock, but I would want something too. I would want justice.
But the idea, see, to me, the idea that they take everything away from him. He's already lost the daughter. He's had all of this, I forgot.
I think this play, this version, does an excellent job of dealing with that. And in the ending, I think it brings it to the perfect culmination, and the actress who tries to stop Shylock calls him by his real name. She doesn't call him Stop Shylock, she says Stop Rich, because it's in the play version of Richard Topol, who is just so fed up with the discrimination. It was so powerfully done.
How many playbills, everybody?
I would say 3. I wasn't as impressed with it as you were.
I concur. I would say 3, maybe 3.5 on a good night.
I think everything aside from Richard Topol as Shylock, I would give a 3.5. But his performance over the course of the play, and it's like the beginning 3.5. He's being very funny, and you can see the roots of what comes. But by the end of it, I give the whole play 5 playbills, because the way he did it, and like I said, it was a slap in the face. It was so painful to watch. It was so real. So it just elevates it to 5 full playbills.
And certainly with all the
quite taken with this play.
with all the anti-Semitism going on,
well,
I think it's
that's the
especially
whole,
potent.
I think
Moving on to a show that was not written by William Shakespeare and is actually a new play. We are talking about McNeal, and this is at Lincoln Center. It stars Robert Downey Jr., and it is a play about an author, but also a play that takes on artificial intelligence. This play was written by Ayat Akhtar and directed by Bartlett Sher. And here, Downey Jr. plays an author who is using artificial intelligence to write his latest book. In fact, he says to the artificial intelligence, "Write a book in my style." And I'm thinking, well, what style is that? Because it turns out that his previous work wasn't even his. It was plagiarized from his late wife. So exactly what kind of style this guy actually has. Did he ever write anything on his own? I'm not so sure. And it deals with the question of artificial intelligence, but doesn't give us any conclusion, which I don't see how anyone could at this point, but it really doesn't give us much to chew on with it.
It kind of skates along the top of the question, and it doesn't. And then it comes down to, well, you know, the fact that he was a plagiarist, and the fact that the thing, you know, it's only for his own gain. It's nothing to do with the larger question of artificial intelligence, which is really the thing that's most important right now. You know?
I think it's also worth mentioning that the character rails against artificial intelligence in the beginning of the show. Also, I think the show makes a lot of points that just are wrong. For example, the show criticizes the main character for using things that happened in his life and stories of people in his life in his work. And like, that's just something writers do. Now, the way he does it is a little bit rude because he doesn't really change a lot of the details. So anyone who knows him and is familiar with him or the other person is suddenly going to know all their business. But like, writers drawing from their real life is not plagiarism. That's not what plagiarism is.
No.
So it feels like the only thing he really plagiarizes is his wife's
The
book.
only thing? That's a gigantic
Which
thing.
it's a huge thing.
I think there may have been more also, but the bottom.
I just finished one thought. But they make this whole huge thing about how everything he's written is plagiarized, but it's the one thing that's plagiarized, and everything else is just normal writer behavior.
I didn't get the impression you did that they thought everything was. And I thought it was interesting that the editor / publisher, whatever she was, played by Andrea Martin, knew immediately after she read the AI version. She just looked at him and sort of said, "Are you using AI?" And he went, "No." But she caught it right away because there are just things that AI can't do yet. I'm sure there'll come a day when they can do it, and then we'll all be killed. But until that day.
Okay. Someone has been watching The Terminator, hasn't she?
No, actually not, but that's okay.
So conclusion on this. I liked Robert Downey Jr.
Well, it was
enjoyed the chance to see him on stage.
It was very nice.
There was
to see
supposed to be
stage.
quote unquote a hologram. Instead, it was an artificial intelligence projection. Very accurate, but.
It was, but it was two-dimensional,
yes.
and a hologram is three-dimensional.
Right.
I totally agree with you. I was let down by that.
And maybe that's why I am giving this play 2.5 playbills.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And the half is for Robert Downey Jr. It's not for much else.
Yeah, I'd say somewhere 2.5.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 at a stretch. I liked RDJ himself. I thought he was pretty good. Although there were parts where I was like at the end where the main character has this whole monologue about is he going to kill himself or not, and I was like, you're letting this guy who is clearly an asshole like go out on his own note, and I was just like, feels like it went against what the story was trying to say. The acting I would give 3 playbills. The show itself, I agree, 2.5.
Right.
I think we have to move on.
Okay.
Sometimes Leslie and I cannot see a show together, so we go separately, and when we do, I go to my corner, and Leslie goes to her lounge, and tonight, we're each going.
Conceived and directed by West Coast playwright Stephen Sachs, Fatherland is an 80-minute play about a father so radicalized by MAGA social media that he leads a faction of the mob that's actually stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2020. His son, so concerned by his father's increasingly violent and racist behavior, turns the father in to the authorities. And of course, there's a trial, and the father is put in prison. The play, by turns, is a family, political, and courtroom drama, but it's directed in a simple, straightforward manner, with all the dialogue taken verbatim from public statements, case evidence, and official transcripts. It's rare to see a play on the stage that quickly when a theme is actually ripped from the headlines. It's not television, it's a play, and there's a lot involved in production. Presented with multiple extensions at City Center's second stage, Fatherland was timely, dramatic, and beautifully acted by Ron Bodita as the father, Patrick Kelleher as the son, and Anna Kaha and Larry Poindexter as the opposing lawyers. Kudos to all involved with Fatherland for a taut and thought-provoking evening.
I think it's safe to say that the movie Elf, which starred Will Ferrell, has taken its place among Christmas classics such as The Grinch, A Christmas Carol, and Miracle on 34th Street. Elf the Musical, which is becoming a yearly event on Broadway, offers a charming, highly entertaining, and faithful rendition of the movie. The story remains the same. Buddy, a human who has been raised as an elf, travels to that magical land of Manhattan to find his father, a man who, horrors, is on Santa's naughty list. Buddy likes to sing, give hugs, and is always full of Christmas spirit, which doesn't mesh well with the New York sensibility, and especially with his father, a jaded publisher of children's books whose career is heading down the tubes. If the story and score strike you as better than average, it may be because the book was written by Thomas Meehan, who wrote Annie, and Bob Martin, who wrote The Drowsy Chaperone. The score is by Matthew Sklar and Chad Beglin, who did the prompt. Gray Henson has the unenviable task of following Will Ferrell as Buddy, but he easily captures the character's innocence, enthusiasm, and sense of fun. Michael Hayden, who bears a strong resemblance to James Caan, easily fills the role of Buddy's father, as do Ashley Brown and Kai Edgar as his wife and son. Kayla Davian is Jovi, Buddy's love interest, and Sean Astin rounds out the cast as Ho Ho Ho, Santa. Philip McKinley directed. If the movie Elf was never your cup of tea, this is not the show for you. But if you are looking to see captured on stage what Will Ferrell did so effortlessly on the screen, you will not be disappointed, and then some.
And that is our show for this evening. And when you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me,
And sometimes Miriam,
us 2 + 1.
on the aisle.